Quattro GmbH is a 100% daughter of the Audi AG. We are responsible for the R8, the RS cars. We are responsible for Audi exclusive program and Audi collection. And our third business unit is Audi Sport Customer Racing, where we develop and sell race cars to race teams.
Got it. So when did Quattro GmbH actually start? When was it founded?
It was founded way back in '83. At that time, our only business was the Audi collection. Okay. And then in '94, we started the individualization program. And since '96, we are in the car development and manufacturing business.
So it's a whole separate company from Audi AG.
Yeah.
Why is that? Why is it a separate company from?
Well, for those special vehicle I mentioned, the Audi AG decided we want to have a special team. We don't want to do it in the huge organization. These are very specific projects, and we want to have a special company to treat those cars.
And you have some people in Ingolstadt, which is where Audi AG is, but you actually have a whole separate area, whole separate factory?
Yeah, we are on both facilities in Germany. So our headquarters is Neckarsulm, okay, where we have the company management, the commercial management. 95% of my developed team is sitting in Neckarsulm. And we also have production and quality assurance. That's all in total around 600 employees. And in Ingolstadt, we have IT services, purchasing department, and the Audi collection people, and these are around 100. So all in total, Quattro GmbH is about 700, a little over 700 employees.
And the name came from, I guess you could say, Group B Rally for the most
yeah.
part. Yeah.
So,
yeah. And that was right at the pinnacle of technology for most cars.
Yeah.
But the first road car you produced was actually the S6, right? The
S6 Plus was our first project at Quattro GmbH.
So a lot of people get confused. You have RS, Rennsport. What about the RS2?
RS2 was in end of '93, beginning of '94, and we weren't involved in that project. That was done at this time as a cooperation between the Audi AG and the Porsche.
So the two companies came together
and took their people together and developed and produced that car.
Got it.
And the car was produced in a Porsche facility.
And when did you join Quattro?
I joined Quattro at the end of '94.
Okay.
The S6 Plus development at that time was just ongoing. And I first started in the car individualization program. And '98, end of '97, I took over the responsibility for general development, and I'm in that position now since today.
So what was the first car you actually worked on?
My first baby, I call it, was the RS4, launched in 2000, a halo car, V6, twin turbo, 380 horses, and yeah. Since then, I'm involved in all the RSs and the R8.
What was it like working on that first project for yourself?
Well, of course, everything was new, so it's a great honor to be responsible for such a project. And of course, because we were just starting with our development team, we had, on one hand, we had the project ongoing, and on the other hand, we had to get the right people, and so we hired a lot of people at that time to build up a development team that can treat a complete car development.
Were those people coming from Audi AG or Motorsports or?
Oh, from all over. So there were people coming from Audi AG. There were people coming from racing. There were people coming from competitors everywhere.
Got it. And well, tell me about that project in particular, where the RS4 became such a halo, still is a halo car. How did you emotionally feel to that car? It was your first real project. It really defined Quattro into the next decade.
Well, as I said, it was a great honor, and I still love that car. I just drove, in the last year, I drove one RS4 B5, it was called at that time, out of our Audi Tradition people, and well, my heart opened.
Well, you've now come into the 2000s, and there's just been an onslaught of new cars. And back then, you only had one car to worry about.
Yeah.
And now it seems like you've got 6, right? Or
Yeah, well, at that time, as you said, our first car was the RS4 in 2000.
Yeah.
And when we were done with that project, we started the development of an RS6 V8 twin turbo. That car was launched in 2002. And so we did one after another. Today, we have a whole program, and of course, forced by that, our team, the number of employees, the number of people that are working on those projects was increasing. And today, our program is RS3, TTRS, RS4, RS5, and of course the R8 with all its derivatives. And this was, let's say, really a milestone. And the next big thing for me when we started the development of the R8, because an RS model is based on an S model in the Audi range. So of course you change the exterior, you change the engine, transmission, the driving dynamics. But when we started the R8 development, it was just a white piece of paper, and that is what every engineer dreams of.
So that was a substantial change in the company at that point. How many people did you bring on? R8 has become such an icon in terms of sports cars of today, but that project started 8 years ago? 6 years ago?
Seven years
ago. Yeah, and you produce a lot of cars. So how did you develop a whole car from the ground up?
Yeah, of course. Well, this had to be an increase, or it needed to be that the development team needed to be raised. So a higher number of people that are involved to treat a complete car. Of course, the Audi people helped us on specific parts, so we just gave those specific things to the Audi AG people. And then, of course, this car is under our responsibility of production. That means at that time we had to build up a body and white shop, an assembly line, a quality assurance for a complete car. And that in total raised our number by something between 250 and 300 people.
And before that, you were half that. You were
around.
So doubled your size with one car.
Yeah, approximately.
That's pretty incredible. So we're looking at the RS5 here, and this is the latest offer. But I would love to go through the development process. When does this car start? You look at the A5, which was 2005, 2006, but before that you had the new Volare concept, which was the first two-door Audi in quite some time, two-door coupe Audi in quite some time. So when did your mind start thinking about this car?
Around that time when the Audi colleagues made the decision to transfer the Volare into an A5. At that time we were involved because you plan the life cycle of a model, you plan the different models, and of course you plan the A model with the different engines, the S, and for the RS model we step in. So we are in discussion with those people when they define the A5, but that's only just conversation and bringing in the angle we view at it and what our plans are. And see, normally it's first the Audi A model is launched, then approximately a year later the S model, an additional year later the RS model. So the real work for us starts about 2.5 years before we launch the car.
Got it.
So in the time period before, we're just in discussion and keeping our ears on what's going on.
So what's the development process like? What do you when you're the 2 years out before it's launched? what do you have to do? Is it pretty much set in stone what you need to do? How much wiggle room is there to do maybe something a little bit better than what you thought? Or
Yeah, well, let me put it this way. The mechanical structure, so what engine do we want to use, what transmission, what is the mechanical structure we want to use, that is frozen more or less when we start the project.
Okay.
But the real difference makes how you get your product, your RS5, in interaction with the driver.
Okay.
And of course there is a lot of work in tuning parts, in working on suspension setting, working on applications for the steering, for the suspension, for the transmission, everything under the goal. I want to create a car with a character and create a car that interacts with the driver.
who defines that character? Do you have a set group of drivers? Are they professional drivers? Is it you? Who defines how the car feels?
Well, to build up that character, there's nothing better than driving a car. Yeah. And of course, all the people that are involved in my team, they have that focus. And well, there's nothing better than driving even the early stages of the test cars and say, well, I want to have this a little sharper, I want to have more turn in, I want to have the car a little that it helps me rotate in the corner, the sound, all the emotional things. Just drive and drive, and then of course we also use race drivers to test the car on racetracks. Our DTM or Le Mans driver, they drive our early models.
They do?
Yeah.
So you've got the Le Mans drivers in the car as
yeah.
prototypes.
And they give us a feedback, and that is maybe a different angle than we have. And then we sort it out. Is it necessary to change it a little more in this direction so that we finally get a round-up car that fulfills our targets.
Got it. And well, so you look so far in advance of where these cars are going. You also work on design elements for S-Line and well, how the car looks. Is that also set in stone years out, or is that kind of?
Yeah, well, that is our work in, for example, on an RS5. When I said those 2.5 years, yeah. The first thing is that we together with the designers. We start to build an exterior model. Okay. And of course there are technical things, so we tell them how large we need an air intake, okay. For the cooling system, for the water cooling, for the oil cooling and all that stuff. And so my engineers and the designers, they really work close together. And then there is an exterior model created, and this is then released by the board of Audi. And then it's frozen, and
you go on from there.
We go on in development.
So, where does that car start its life? How does the car actually get built from chassis to the whole process? Can you tell the whole process of a car's birth, an RS model's birth? Yeah,
well, there's not every RS model is the same. Okay, so I start with the RS5.
Yeah, stick with the RS5.
First of all, this car only shares the roof, the hood, and the doors with a standard A5. The rest of the exterior is completely new. The fenders, the bumpers, the rear lid because of the heck spoiler, and we invested the money at the body and white shop in Ingolstadt that they are able to build the RS chassis. And then the car is painted with all the other A5, S5s. And then again we invested money in the assembly line at Ingolstadt. So this car runs through the assembly together with all the other A5 and S5. There's nothing better for economic reason and for quality reason than to have a car just built once. So it wouldn't make any sense to build an S5 and then bring it to our facility and take off the engine and the suspension and all that stuff and put RS parts in. So the RS5 runs 100% completely in the A5, S5 line in Ingolstadt. I said not every RS model is the same. For example, on the last RS6, the car was so complicated to assemble because of that huge V10 twin turbo and all that, so that we could manage to have the RS6 together with the A6s in the assembly, but then we took it out. I call it a 75% car, and the car got to our facility at Quattro GmbH, and in another 22, 25 hours per car, the car was built to finish.
Got it. So I want to get into a few other questions. One about motorsports and the integration between Audi Sport and Quattro GmbH and the trickle-down technology, as well as the R8 program. So let's first start off, how connected is Audi Sport to Quattro GmbH?
There's a clear border. So Audi Sport, under the head of Dr. Ulrich, is responsible for all the factory racing. That means the Le Mans racing prototypes, the LMP cars, and the DTM cars. We are responsible for customer racing. That means we develop then race versions of an R8, for example, the GT3 version of the R8 LMS Ultra, or here in the US, the Grand M. And over in Europe, we also sell a race version of the TTRS. These cars are not allowed to drive on official road. They do not have a license plate, and we just sell them to professional race teams. So this is a separation. Of course, when we are developing R8 LMS or TTRS, we are in discussion with the people from Audi Sport, but it's just talking about know-how, talking about technical possibilities. The work is then done separately.
So you take an R8 LMS, for example. How much does that car how much does it go down the assembly line as a production car and then taken off to become a race car?
Well, we have, first of all, the chassis has very few modifications of the race car compared to a series car. And they're both built in the body and white shop, where the street car and the race car. Of course, then after the chassis is built, we bring in the safety features like roll bar and so on. And then we take the car to the assembly, and we call it a part sampler. So some parts that the race car shares with the street car are assembled, and then we take out that chassis, put it on a trolley, and bring it in our racing facility, which is about 5 miles away. And then the race car is built by hand. One interesting thing maybe is the R8 LMS Ultra race car and the street R8, they share over 50% of the parts.
Same car. That's pretty cool.
The engine is nearly 100% series, and of course that is a big benefit for our customers that are racing those cars, because the engine lasts a complete season, racing season, and then in the winter you bring it for a revision.
One of two final questions. How does it make you feel working on these cars? It's such a special brand. You compare it to M or AMG. How does this make you feel that you're working on a very elite vehicle?
Well, of course, for an engineer, it's always the dream to work on the high performance side of the car business. And while I'm in that glad position, I'm doing it now for 14 years. And I always say I have one daughter and a lot of babies.
The last question I have is somewhat of a technical question, and you may laugh at it, but why are the VIN numbers different? Why do you have a VIN number that may look the same on an Audi but be completely different for Quattro?
Well, one reason is in the VIN number, the letters tell you who is the responsible car manufacturer. So that means for all RS and R8 model, we are the responsible car manufacturer. So when you look at the papers of the car, the manufacturer is not Audi, it's Quattro GmbH.
Got it.
So, and therefore the letters in the VIN is for an Audi, it's AU in the beginning, and Quattro GmbH is UA. And another thing is the last 6 digits. If it's a Quattro GmbH car, the first of these last 6 is a 9, and then the rest is counting up.
And has that always been the case?
Yeah.
Pretty cool. Stephan, thank you so much for your time.
It was a pleasure meeting you.
Yeah, you too. You too.